Useless, Cole mumbled, hurling the book onto the table like it was garbage. I just stared at him, feeling my chest tighten up. "What, this thing?" he asked, waving his hand dismissively at the scrapbook. The one I'd slaved over for weeks. "This is the best you could come up with. A bunch of pictures and sappy junk. You're being ridiculous, Evelyn." My hands balled into fists in my lap, but I made myself stay calm. "I thought you'd appreciate something that actually meant something. It's a collection of memories, everything we've gone through together." He rolled his eyes like he couldn't be bothered. "What have we gone through? Give me a break. I'm so tired of all this overly emotional crap. You could have gotten me something that I could actually use, but instead you waste your time on this nonsense. It's just embarrassing." I took a big breath, trying to keep him from seeing how much his words stung. "Cole, No," he cut me off, standing up and running a hand back through his hair. "You just don't get it, do you? This isn't working anymore. Your time's not working anymore. I need someone who can actually bring something to my life, not drag me down with this pathetic attempt at being thoughtful." My stomach did a flip-flop. "What are you trying to say?" he smirked, crossing his arms like he'd already won. "I'm leaving you, Evelyn. I've met someone else. Tessa. She's 20, exciting, and she actually knows how to have fun, unlike you." His words hit me like a punch in the gut, but I wasn't about to let him see how much it hurt. "And you think this is the right way to tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling but trying to sound steady. After I poured my heart and soul into this thing, he laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Your heart. That's the whole problem, Evelyn. You're all heart and no substance. I deserve something more." I sat there for a moment, not saying anything, his words just echoing around in my head. And then, to my own surprise, I started to laugh. It wasn't a bitter laugh or a fake one. It was real loud, and it sliced through the tension in the room like a knife. "What's so funny?" Cole asked, narrowing his eyes at me like I was crazy. I stood up, still laughing, and reached for the book. "You don't even realize what you're walking away from," I said, flipping to the back page. "What are you talking about?" he asked, and I could hear the suspicion creeping into his voice. I pulled out the folded deed that I'd tucked into the final page and held it up where he could see it. "This, the deed to a vacation house. I bought it for us. I was going to surprise you tonight, but I guess that's off the table now." His jaw just dropped. You bought a vacation house." I smiled sweetly, slipping the deed into my purse. "Looks like Tessa won't be enjoying that, will she?" Cole's face went all twisted, somewhere between disbelief and panic. For the first time all night, he didn't know what to say. "You bought a house," he finally stammered, all his smugness just crumbling away. "Since when do you just make decisions like that?" I tilted my head, never letting my smile waver. "Since I realized that I can't depend on you for anything that actually matters, Cole. While you were busy chasing after some excitement with a 20-year-old, I was actually building a future for us. Silly me for thinking we both wanted the same things." He opened his mouth to say something, but then he just closed it again, his eyes darting back to the book that was still lying on the table. It was like he was trying to figure out exactly how this whole thing had slipped right through his fingers. "You're overreacting," he said finally, but even his voice didn't sound like he believed it. "This doesn't really change anything. Tessa and you," I cut him off, shaking my head. "Cole, I really don't care. Take her, take your exciting life, and just get out of mine. You've made it pretty obvious where I stand here." I just walked out of the living room and into the bedroom we used to share, and I could hear Cole's sputtering excuses following me as I started packing a small bag for the night. I could hear him pacing around, probably trying to figure out how he could salvage the situation without having to admit that he'd completely miscalculated. I stopped for a moment, staring at the photos on the dresser, wedding pictures, trips we'd taken. Moments that once felt so full of promise. Now they just felt like relics from some other life, one that I'd been clinging to for way too long. By the time I walked back into the living room, Cole was standing by the door, his arms crossed like he was trying to look calm and collected. "You're really just going to leave?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief. "I am," I said, simply brushing right past him. "This is just ridiculous," he snapped. "You're being petty, Evelyn. You're going to regret this." I stopped at the door and turned back to face him. "Maybe I will," but at least I won't regret staying in a marriage where I'm nothing but a punchline to you." And with that, I just stepped outside feeling the cool night air on my face. I felt the weight of Cole's expectations just lift right off my shoulders as I drove away, and the deed to the house was safely tucked away in my bag. I realized that I wasn't just leaving with my belongings. I was leaving with something so much more valuable, the clarity that I really deserved better. Let Cole go have his fun. I was done playing the part of the loyal wife in his selfish little game. I drove straight to Olivia's house. She was the only person I could think of who would truly understand what had just happened without judging me. When she opened the door, she took one look at me and just frowned. "What did he do times this times time? Can I come in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady but feeling exhausted. She stepped aside, waving me in. "Of course you can." "Kitchen or living room kitchen," I said, knowing she'd already be reaching for the wine. A few minutes later, we were sitting at her little kitchen table, a glass of Merlot in front of me and her giving me her full attention. So she said, leaning back in her chair, "Spill it." I took a deep breath and told her everything from the scrapbook to Cole's cruel words to his big announcement about Tessa. By the time I got to the part about the vacation house, her jaw was practically on the floor. "He called you useless after everything you've done for him," she said, her voice getting louder with every word. "And then he had the nerve to tell you he was leaving for some 20-year-old. Are you kidding me right now?" I shook my head, swirling the wine around in my glass. "Nope, that's Cole. Always so sure of himself, always thinking I'd just roll over and take it. But you didn't," Olivia said, a smile starting to break through her anger. "You walked out. You took back the house. And honestly, Evelyn, good for you." Just hearing her say it out loud made something inside me just shift. I hadn't just walked away from Cole. I'd walked away from years of trying to be someone he could appreciate. Someone who was never going to be good enough for him. "So what now?" Olivia asked, snapping me right out of my thoughts. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've been so focused on making our marriage work, I don't even know who I am outside of it anymore." Olivia reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "You'll figure it out, just one step at a time. But first, you're staying here tonight. No arguing allowed." I smiled. "Thanks, Olivia." Later that night, as I lay on the couch in her living room, I felt the exhaustion of the day just catch up to me. But underneath the tiredness was something else: relief. Cole was no longer my problem. For years I'd bent over backward to make him happy, and now I didn't have to anymore. I had no idea what the future held, but I was actually excited to find out. The morning after I left Cole, I woke up in Olivia's living room to the sound of my phone just buzzing like crazy on the coffee table. Groaning, I reached for it, squinting at the screen. Missed calls 6. Text messages 14. All from Cole. I unlocked my phone, scrolling through the wall of messages. "Where did you go? We need to talk." "You're being childish, Evelyn. You can't just walk away like this." The last one just made me laugh bitterly. Walk away? That's exactly what he told me he was doing last night. Olivia walked into the room holding a cup of coffee. "Let me guess." "Cole bingo," I muttered, holding up the phone. "He's losing it." "Well, what did he expect?" she said, setting the coffee down in front of me. "You can't just treat someone like garbage and then act all surprised when they finally stop putting up with it." I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee. "He's not used to consequences. He's always gotten away with everything, his arrogance, his selfishness, but this time he's not getting what he wants." "Damn right he's not," Olivia said, a satisfied grin on her face. Later that day I got another text, but this one caught my attention. "I'll come by the house later. We need to sort this out. My time's house." He was still acting like it was his, like he had some right to just come and go whenever he pleased. I thought about texting him back, telling him to stay away, but then I remembered what Olivia had said the night before. Let him stew in it for a while. So instead I just ignored the text and spent the day with Olivia, running errands and catching up on all the parts of my life I'd been neglecting for years. By the time I got back to my house that evening, Cole's car was already parked in the driveway. I parked on the street, taking a deep breath before walking up to the door. He was pacing around in the living room when I walked in, and his face was a mix of anger and desperation. "You finally decided to show up," he said, his voice sharp. I live here, I replied calmly, setting my purse down on the counter. What are times you times doing here? We need to talk, he said, his voice getting softer. This has all gotten out of hand. I folded my arms, leaning against the counter. What's gotten out of hand, Cole? The fact that I finally stood up for myself, or the fact that you're realizing that Tessa isn't the prize you thought she was? His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might explode. But instead he just sat down on the couch, running a hand back through his hair. Look, I made a mistake, okay, I wasn't thinking straight. But we can fix this. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Fix this, Cole, this isn't some broken vase. This is years of you taking me for granted, just brushing aside everything I do and expecting me to just keep smiling through it. Evelyn, he started, but I cut him off again. No, I said firmly. You don't get to decide when we fix things. You made your choice. Now you can just live with it. I grabbed my bag and walked upstairs, leaving him just sitting there in stunned silence. The day after Cole's tantrum, I packed up all his things, left them neatly by the front door, and changed the locks. When he showed up that evening looking as smug as ever, I met him on the porch with a firm look on my face and a folder in my hand. What's this? He asked, glancing down at the papers I was holding. Your things, I said, pointing to the suitcase by the door. And this is the contact information for the lawyer I hired this morning. You'll be hearing from her soon. His jaw tightened up, but he still couldn't help but get one last dig in. You're being ridiculous, Evelyn. You can't handle life without me. I smiled just a little bit. We'll see about that. Now get off my porch. He just stared at me, his confidence finally starting to crumble before grabbing his suitcase and stomping off. Over the next 2 weeks, Cole's absence just felt like a breath of fresh air. The house was quieter, cleaner, and it actually felt like a home instead of a battlefield. I stayed busy throwing myself into work, reconnecting with friends, and leaning on Olivia for emotional support. She was so thrilled to see me finally standing up for myself. Good riddance, she'd said when I told her I'd kicked Cole out. He was a leech, Evelyn. You're way better off without him. I knew she was right, but there were still moments, usually late at night when it was quiet, when doubt would creep in. Had I really done the right thing? What if I ended up regretting it all? But those thoughts never lasted long, especially not after I got times call from Cole. Evelyn, he said, and I could hear the frustration just dripping from his voice. We need to talk. I sighed, already tired of the conversation before it had even started. What do you want, Cole? It's Tessa, he said, and I could hear the bitterness in every word. She's gone. The corner of my mouth just twitched. Is that so? She laughed at me. He spat out the words, just coming out in a rush. She said I was pathetic, said I threw away the only good thing I had going for me. She couldn't believe I let you keep the house. Now I was just smiling. Oh, the house. I'm sure that stung. She said I was an idiot, he went on, just ignoring my sarcasm. A complete loser for losing everything you'd worked for. And then she just walked out. It was almost too satisfying to hear. The man who just dismissed me, belittled me, and thought he could just replace me with someone younger, was finally facing the consequences of his own actions. And now you're calling me because... I asked, trying to keep my voice cool. Because I made a mistake, he said, his voice dropping. A huge mistake. Can we talk, please? I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. No, Cole. We have nothing to talk about. You made your bed. Now you can lie in it. Before he could say anything else, I just hung up, letting the silence just settle around me like a warm blanket. That night, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, I felt a deep sense of relief. Cole's life was falling apart, but for the first time it wasn't my problem anymore. I had my life back, and I wasn't about to look back. The divorce process actually went faster than I was expecting. My lawyer helped me get all my finances in order, document everything, and make sure that I'd be protected. Now sitting in her office, going over all the finalized paperwork, I felt this strange mix of emotions, relief, closure, and still this little bit of disbelief that this chapter of my life was finally coming to an end. Everything looks solid, my lawyer said, flipping through the pages. Cole doesn't have a whole lot of leverage here, especially since he hasn't contested anything. Frankly, I think he knows he's not in a position to fight you. I nodded, and a small smile tugged at the corners of my lips. I think he's finally realized that I'm not the pushover he thought I was. She chuckled. I'd say you've made that crystal clear. Leaving her office that afternoon, I felt like I was just shedding a weight that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The paperwork was all filed. My finances were secure, and Cole was officially out of my life, both on paper and in reality. The timing really couldn't have been any better. That same evening, Olivia came over with a bottle of wine and her usual flair for just celebrating my victories. To Evelyn, she said, raising her glass up high. The woman who finally kicked Cole to the curb and took back her life. I laughed and clinked my glass against hers. And to Olivia, the friend who never once said, "I told you so." Not yet anyway, she teased me, taking a sip. As the night went on, we talked about everything: my plans for the future, her latest crazy adventures, and of course Cole's dramatic fall from grace. So Olivia said, leaning back on the couch with a smirk on her face, "Do you think he's still crying over Tessa?" "Probably," I replied, grinning. "But it's not like he's got a whole lot else going on for him. No wife, no house, no mistress. Honestly, I almost feel bad for him," almost, Olivia said, laughing. That night after Olivia had left, I sat alone in the quiet of my own home, just thinking about everything that had happened. The old me, the one who just bent over backward to keep Cole happy, who was just constantly worrying about his approval, felt like some distant memory. This new version of myself, the one who could actually laugh at his downfall and find joy in taking my life back, was here to stay. Cole had really underestimated me, but I hadn't underestimated myself. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The weeks after the divorce were a whirlwind of change, but it was a chaos that I felt like I could control. Without Cole's shadow just hanging over every single decision, I found myself rediscovering all the pieces of myself that had been buried for years under his criticism and demands. It wasn't just about rebuilding, it was about thriving. One of the first things that I did was go visit the vacation house. For so long it had been this abstract symbol of hope, a promise of something better for our future. But now it was mine, completely free from Cole and his arrogance. When I pulled up to the property nestled against this beautiful lake and surrounded by towering pines, I just felt this rush of pride. I'd done this. I'd made this dream a reality, not for Cole, not for us, but just for times me asterisk. Walking inside the house was everything that I'd imagined: cozy but still spacious, with these big windows that just framed the beautiful view. I spent the whole weekend there by myself, unpacking boxes, arranging the furniture, and just enjoying the peace of knowing that I didn't have to share it with someone who just didn't value me. Olivia came to visit the next weekend, bringing her usual brand of energy that's just contagious. "This place is absolutely amazing," she said, spinning around slowly in the living room. "How did you keep this a secret for so long?" "I honestly don't know," I said, laughing. "I think I wanted it to be perfect before I shared it with anyone else. And honestly, part of me was just afraid that Cole would somehow just ruin it." "Well, it's perfect now," she said, plopping down onto the couch. "And you really deserve every bit of it." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sunshine streaming through the windows. I felt like I truly deserved something good. As the weeks turned into months, I started to fill my life with things that I'd just put on hold for way too long. I picked up photography again, spending hours capturing the beauty of the lake and the woods all around it. I joined a local book club, something Cole had always just scoffed at as a waste of time, and I started traveling. Not for work, not to meet anyone else's expectations, but just because I wanted to. Each new experience just felt like this small act of rebellion against the version of myself that I'd been when I was with Cole. I wasn't just living, I was thriving. One evening, sitting on the deck of the vacation house with a glass of wine, I thought about the life that I had left behind. There was no anger anymore, no bitterness, just gratitude for the lessons that I'd learned and the freedom that I'd gained. A few months after the divorce was finalized, life just felt like it had finally settled into this new rhythm. The vacation house was my sanctuary now, a place where I could be alone with my thoughts or have friends over to share the peace that I had found. Olivia visited often, usually with a bottle of wine and stories about her latest adventures. "You've just completely transformed, you know," that she said one evening as we sat by the fire pit overlooking the lake. I looked over at her, raising an eyebrow. transformed how exactly Olivia grinned. The old Evelyn she would have been running around just fussing over everyone else's comfort, worrying about whether the cushions were fluffed or the glasses were filled. "This Evelyn," she said, gesturing at me, sitting there in sweatpants with a cozy blanket wrapped around my shoulders. "She's relaxed, happy, and doesn't give a damn about what anyone else thinks." I laughed, sipping my wine. I guess I've finally realized that I can really only control my own happiness. Trying to make Cole happy was like trying to pour water into a bucket that's got a hole in it. It was never going to be enough. Those lessons reached beyond just the house, too. I started freelancing, which was something I'd always wanted to do but never really pursued because Cole thought it was just too unstable. Now my schedule was completely my own and the freedom was just exhilarating. One of my clients, this design firm, invited me to lead a workshop for their whole team. The experience just reignited a confidence in me that I hadn't felt in years. "Why haven't you ever started your own business?" the CEO asked me after the workshop was over. The question lingered in my mind long after I left the meeting. Why times hadn't times I? A few weeks later, I started laying all the groundwork for my own consulting firm. It was absolutely terrifying, but for the first time I wasn't holding myself back because I was afraid of failing or worse of Cole's disapproval. Olivia was my biggest cheerleader, just encouraging me every single step of the way and even helped me come up with a name for the business. North Star Consulting, she suggested, her eyes just sparkling with excitement. "Because you've just found your own way like the total badass that you are." I rolled my eyes at her, but I couldn't help but smile. North Star Consulting it is. As I just poured myself into building the business, I felt this sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Every small win, a new client, a glowing review, a successful project, was a reminder of just how far I'd come. And for every win, there was this quiet moment of gratitude. Gratitude for all the strength that I'd found, for the friends who had supported me, and just for the chance to rebuild my life completely on my own terms. One evening, sitting out on the deck with my laptop, just finishing up plans for a new project, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Cole. "Can we talk?" I just stared at the screen for a moment before deleting the message without even replying. Some things are just better left in the past. 6 months after I walked away from Cole, I stood on the deck of the vacation house, watching the sun just dip below the horizon. The lake was shimmering with all these hues of orange and pink, the kind of view that used to feel like a luxury but now felt like a promise I'd made to myself and actually kept. I had built a life that I was truly proud of. North Star Consulting was thriving way beyond what I had even imagined when I first started. The freedom to choose my clients, set my own hours, and work on the projects that I really wanted to made me feel more alive than I had in years. Olivia came to visit me that evening, like she often did, carrying a box of pastries from some local bakery that she'd found. "You know, I honestly never thought I would say this," she said, setting the box down on the table. "But I think Cole might have actually done you a favor." I laughed, pouring us both a glass of wine. "You're not wrong there. If he hadn't been such a jerk, I might still be stuck just trying to make him happy." She raised her glass. "To Cole, the world's most clueless man, for finally setting you free." We clinked glasses, laughing, but her words just stayed with me long after she'd left. I'd been so focused on just moving forward that I hadn't even stopped to think about just how much had actually changed. The timid version of myself who was always seeking Cole's approval just felt like some stranger to me now. This new life wasn't just about escaping from a bad marriage. It was about rediscovering who I really was, what I really wanted, and what made me truly happy. And it felt like I finally knew all the answers. As the stars started to come out in the sky, I grabbed a notebook and a pen and started jotting down ideas for the future. A new marketing strategy for North Star, consulting a list of all the places I wanted to travel to next. All these goals I never would have dreamed, up until this point. Later, as I closed my notebook and gazed out at the lake, a realization struck me. It wasn't just about being free from Cole's expectations. It was about being liberated from my own self-doubts, the ones that had kept me playing small and living in fear for so long. A month or so later, I received an email from one of my new clients. The subject line read, "Keynote Opportunity." Intrigued, I opened it up and quickly scanned the message. They were hoping I would speak at an upcoming industry conference, sharing my journey as an entrepreneur and highlighting the success story of North Star Consulting. For a fleeting moment, I hesitated. Public speaking had never really been my forte. Cole had often made fun of me for stumbling over my words, even during casual conversations, let alone something as formal as a keynote speech. But this time, his voice held no power over me. I clicked reply and typed I'd be honored to participate. Preparing for the keynote became my new primary focus, and with Olivia's unwavering encouragement, I channeled all my energy into crafting a speech that felt genuine and authentic. Don't sugarcoat a thing, Olivia advised me. Tell your story exactly as it is. The failures, the triumphs, every single bit of it. That's what people truly connect with. And that's precisely what I resolved to do. The day of the conference finally arrived, and as I stood backstage anxiously waiting for my turn to speak, I felt that familiar blend of nervousness and excitement bubbling inside me. When the host announced my name and introduced me, I confidently walked onto the stage to polite applause from the audience. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I began. My name is Evelyn, and if you had asked me a year ago, I never would have imagined standing here before you all. Back then, my entire life revolved around desperately trying to meet the expectations of someone who ultimately didn't even believe in me. But today I'm standing here because I finally chose to believe in myself. As I continued to speak openly, sharing the story of how North Star Consulting was born from a place of personal rediscovery and resilience, I couldn't help but notice heads nodding in agreement and understanding throughout the place. Audience. People were leaning in their faces, lit up with smiles, and some were even diligently jotting down notes. I felt for the first time like my voice truly mattered, not just to myself but to others as well. After the speech concluded, several attendees approached me personally to share their own stories of personal struggle and triumph over adversity. You inspired me so much today, one woman said, her eyes shining brightly with emotion. Thank you for reminding me that it's genuinely never too late to start over and chase your dreams. Her words stayed with me long after I left the conference, making me feel more empowered and validated than ever before. That evening, as I relaxed on the deck of the vacation house, I reflected upon everything that had led me to this particular moment in my life. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the moments of self-doubt, it had all been an integral part of the journey shaping me into the person I was today. Cole was now nothing more than a distant memory, his incessant texts and calls long ignored and forgotten. Tessa had been right all along, he really was a loser. But I no longer felt the need to seek validation from her, from him, or from anyone else for that matter. I had built a life that I truly loved, one small step at a time, and it was genuinely just getting started. This was my story now, and I was the one writing every single word of it.